Hi everybody, welcome to the Attract Capital webinars. I'm Janine, I'm here with David Barnett, CEO and founder.
Hello everyone.
Today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, the art of closing cross-border deals. So this is a very interesting topic because you can do a lot of deals within the same country and you're also going cross-country, cross-border. So many might think that cross-border deals are a little bit harder to close. Why do you think that people think that?
Well, it's a great point, Janine. Cross-border deals are, there's a lot going on cross-border right now, and they are harder to close. They're harder to work on. I'm an advisor and I advise companies over in Europe, and frequently they're sourcing capital from another country. So you might have a company in Germany getting capital from London. You might have a company in the UK getting capital from somebody in France. So it's just much more difficult when you do it that way because there's other jurisdictions and they have different ways of doing things in those other countries, and you really have to overcome all that. So, and you even have some time zone considerations when you're in the U.S. and you're helping companies in other countries. So there's a number of different factors, and I think we're going to touch on a few of them as we get further into this.
I was going to say, as you're going through those factors, do you think that there are specific ones that make this deal sort of harder than a regular?
I think a few things are, there's an over-reliance on technology to communicate with these cross-border deals, and so what you have to do is you have to try to break that urge to just email or to text people, and you kind of have to find a way to balance personal connection with virtual connection. But the factors really are that the requirements of each country might be slightly different. So the lender might expect the company to maintain its books in a certain way, but the company that's in a different country may record their financials in a way that's appropriate for the country, but not for the country that the lender's in. So there could be a mismatch that way. You can have different diligence approaches. So some countries have business practices where their diligence is less substantive and more technical. So they're going to look more at form over substance. And then you have other lenders that are going to look at things much more deeply, and they're going to look at substance over form. So a lot of times you have to sync that up because the company might be used to a certain due diligence approach, and they may, and the lender from a different country may have a completely different diligence approach, which really works for them.
Yeah.
And you really want to modulate the company's approach to fit what the lender's expecting.
So it sounds like you almost have to take what one country does, the other one does,
You have to-
and create your whole new way of communicating.
That's great. Absolutely. You have to
A
understand.
whole new language between both countries.
You have to understand the language of deal closing in each country,
Yeah.
and you need to know the different notes, and then you need to orchestrate it accordingly. And that even
Harmonize.
You have to harmonize. Absolutely. And that even applies to the legal closing, because if certain countries have certain legal requirements, other countries have different requirements. And so you have to know the jurisdiction that the lender's in and what's standard for that particular country. And you have to get a lawyer in your country that will be able to deal with that and manage it and understand it, and make sure that you're adequately protected. So it's, the financial statements could be different, the legal closing, the due diligence could be different, and also the leadership. So a lot of times lenders, once they get to a certain point, they let the closing of the deal be driven by lawyers, okay? And other lenders in other places will continue to have business people driving the deal closing, not the lawyers. And so you want to make sure that there's a kind of a sync up between how the closing is being driven. Is it completely legal driven or is it business person driven? So there's all these different factors. It's a real milieu of different variables that you have to know, you have to think about, and you almost have to engineer it on the front end so that you get the outcome you want on the back end.
Yeah, so a lot of strategy at play there. So if you had to take all of that, all the strategy and the factors, and narrow it down to like 5 ways to make sure that a cross-border deal could close, what would you say are those 5 things?
That's a great segue.
Bring it all together.
That's a great segue. You got to bring it all together. You got to manage all the challenges. Number 1 is you want to make sure that there's a solid relationship between the borrower and the lender. And that relationship has to be built through physical meetings. It can't be virtual. People have to get in front of each other. They have to have a meeting. They have to have an initial meeting. They have to have a diligence meeting. they have to share a meal, they need to get to know each other, and they need to build some trust between the two parties. So it can't be overly tech-based communication. That's number one. So relationships. Number two, what we find to harmonize, which I think is a great word, is that what we try to do is we try to explain to the lender, this is an attract capital technique that we've used, we explain to the lender in a navigational guide for due diligence. We basically we tell the lender all the different things about what they're going to find when they go through the due diligence process for the company. And we basically explain to them any of the deviations, any of the exceptions, any of the country-specific things that they might find. So this due diligence navigational guide is critical because it really resets the expectations of the lender so that when they look in the data room and they look at all this information, they're not scratching their heads, they understand, and you've basically gotten out in front of any major issues. So relationship building, due diligence navigational guide. Third thing is when you have due diligence meetings. So a lot of times the lender wants to meet customers, they want to meet people that use the product, they want to meet people in the field. You really have to manage that. You have to make sure that you are communicating with the people that are going to be talking to the lender, and you want to make sure that you're just not leaving that to chance, that you can be there alongside of the lender to manage any follow-up questions they might have, lest they get the wrong impression from talking to that due diligence source. That's number 3. 4 is you always want to be checking in with them and taking the pulse of the business people because you never know what issues are going to pop up along the way. And when they're in different countries and everybody's moving in different circles and traveling to different places, it's easy for people to get lost during the deal.
Keep in touch with each other.
Absolutely. And the 5th thing is, this is an attract capital. We're big believers in the fact that when you get to a closing, you want to have the business people, not the lawyers, drive the pace and the timing of the closing process. When the closing gets taken over by lawyers and they control it, there's less of an incentive for them to close it quickly, and there's less of an incentive for them to close it according to whatever their clients want. So because they own it and they can generate a big bill. So the business people have to control it.
Keep the clients first.
So going in reverse order, business people need to drive the closing. You always want to check in with the business people. You want to make sure that you're managing the due diligence trips. You want to use the due diligence navigational guide, and you want to build those relationships.
There you have it. And I think the attract capital technique sounds like the right technique to be used. So for all of our viewers, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to David, anyone from Attract Capital, and they'd be happy to guide you. And that's all we got for today, Rick.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.